Hello everybody, 'tis I, TheRumpledOne, bringing you a book review. The Power of Habit. Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg, or Duhigg. Not really sure how you pronounce that last name. Another psychology book talks about the mind. Why we do what we do. Really interesting topic. It really is. And it's habit. Most of the things you do out of habit. I mean, the first couple times it was a struggle, you had to pay attention, but after that, you don't think about it. You get in the car, you turn the key, you drive off. You don't think, you just do. It's become a habit. It's just like brushing your teeth or taking a shower. Most things we do by habit. And the problem is, if we're all really honest, we have habits that don't serve us well. We can change those habits if we want to. And this book gives some ideas on how to do that. Now, as my fellow traders, you know, some of you all say that you're inconsistent in trading. Well, the thing is, you are consistently inconsistent because you have the habit of being inconsistent. You do the right thing some of the time, but not all the times. But see, this book will help you discover why, and then you can eradicate those problems. So let me read a few quotes. Page 103. We were basically seated decision-making process, we were basically seeding decision-making to a process that occurred without actually thinking, O'Neill said. But at other agencies where change was in the air, good organizational habits were creating success. This is talking about the government, because he says organizations have habits too. And if people just do things because that's just the way they do things. They don't think about it. It's a habit. And that's why government is in such the mess that it's in. It really is. Now let's continue. When lawyers asked for permission to file a lawsuit or enforcement action, it went through a process for approval. The default was authorization to go ahead. The message was clear. At the EPA, aggression gets rewarded. By 1975, the EPA was issuing more than 1,500 new environmental rules a year. You see, once again, government, routines, habits. They just do things without thinking. And if nobody questions it, it just continues to our detriment. It's funny because I thought this was a psychology book, which it is, but it talks a lot about the government case studies and why things are so messed up. Which once again begs the question, if we know why, if we can see things are, then why do we continue to do things that are messed up? Habit is the answer. And here's one that'll open your eyes, and I'm sure you've heard this. Page 180. You never want a serious crisis to go to waste, Rahm Emanuel told a conference of chief executives in the wake of the 2008 global financial meltdown, soon after he was appointed as President Obama's chief of staff. This crisis provides the opportunity for us to do things that you could not do before. Soon afterward, the Obama administration convinced a once reluctant Congress to pass the president's $787 billion stimulus plan. Congress also passed Obama's health care reform, reworked consumer protection laws, and approved dozens of other statutes, from expanding children's health insurance to giving women new opportunities to sue over wage discrimination. It was one of the biggest policy overhauls since the Great Society and the New Deal, and it happened because in the aftermath of a financial catastrophe, lawmakers saw opportunity. So in other words, when things get really bad, there's opportunity to make change, and these government people, they take advantage of the situation. That's why when you see things happening over here, they can do the old smoke and mirror, look at the right hand while the left hand's picking your pocket. But once again, this is a psychology book, not so much political, but it just points out where the problem lies. Let's move on. Page 247. George Washington wrote in 1973, "Gambling is the child of avarice, the brother of inequity, and the father of mischief. This is a vice which is productive of every possible evil. In a word, few gain by this abominable practice, while thousands are injured. Protecting people from their bad habits, in fact, defining which habits should be considered bad in the first place, is a prerogative lawmakers have eagerly seized. Prostitution, gambling, liquor sales on the Sabbath, pornography, usurious loans, sexual relations outside of marriage, or if your tastes are unusual within marriage, are all habits that various legislatures have regulated, outlawed, or tried to discourage with strict and often ineffective laws." In other words, you can see that government is trying to control people, trying to control their habits, trying to restrict their behaviors. Because government is about control, to govern is to control, and that is why we have so many laws. But once again, you see these things they talk about are habits. Now let's move on to page 270. I really did enjoy this book. It was great. The only thing is, it felt like it was too short. When I got to the end, it was just like, isn't there more? Some thinkers, Aristotle wrote, hold that it is by nature that people become good, others that it is by habit, and others that it is by instruction. For Aristotle, habits reign supreme. The behaviors that occur unthinkingly are the evidence of our truest selves, he said. So just as a piece of land has to be prepared beforehand if it is to nourish the seed, so the mind of the pupil has to be prepared in its habits if it is to enjoy and dislike the right things. Ponder that for a second, especially that last part. So the mind of the pupil has to be prepared in its habits if it is to enjoy and dislike the right things. That sounds like child rearing. Prepare your children's minds so you enjoy the proper things and you avoid the things that you should. It gets down to habit. Because if you can create these habits in the young mind, then as they get older, you don't have to try and do any remedial work. It's kind of like in the Matrix. They say after a certain time they don't try to free a mind because the mind resists, it rejects. Page 271. That in some ways is the point of this book. Perhaps a sleepwalking murderer can plausibly argue he wasn't aware of his habit, and so he doesn't bear responsibility for his crime. But almost all the other patterns that exist in most people's lives, how we eat and sleep and talk to our kids, how we unthinkingly spend our time, attention, and money, those are habits we know exist. And once you understand that habits can change, you have the freedom and the responsibility to remake them. Once you understand that habits can be rebuilt, the power of habit becomes easier to grasp, and the only option left is to get to work. So, if you need to stop smoking, you know it, you have to do the work. If you want to lose weight, then move away from the donuts, hit the gym, take a walk, start running. I mean, once again, we have to break the cycle, which they describe in the book. You see, he says the cycle or the pattern, it's very simple. You have a cue, then there's a routine, and then there's a reward. So in other words, something happens, then you do your routine, you get the reward. So maybe you feel a little anxious, That's your cue. You light up a cigarette, and then the nicotine calms you down. That's your reward. So what you got to see is you discover what the cue is, then you see what your routine is, then you see what the reward is, and so what you have to figure out is, how can you get a different routine to get the same reward? Now, sounds easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. I mean, these guys spend years figuring this stuff out. Finally, one last quote, page 273. Later, he would famously write that the will to believe is the most important ingredient in creating belief in change. And that one of the most important methods for creating that belief was habits. Habits, he noted, are what allows us to do a thing with difficulty the first time, but soon do it more and more easily, and finally, with sufficient practice, do it semi-mechanically or with hardly any consciousness at all. Once we choose what we want to be, people grow to the way in which they have been exercised, just as a sheet of paper or a coat once creased or folded tends to fall forever afterward into the same identical folds. If you believe you can change, if you make it a habit, the change becomes real. This is the real power of habit, the insight that your habits are what you choose them to be. Once that choice occurs and becomes automatic, it's not only real, it starts to seem inevitable. The thing, as James wrote, that bears us irresistibly toward our destiny, whatever the latter may be. So you see, as you know, it's not groundbreaking news, habits. But what this book will do, it will explain to you how habits are created and how you can change your habits. So once again, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business by Charles Duhigg. I would add it to the must-read column. Now I know some people out there are telling me that I'm making them read a lot, but you know, that's your choice. But see, this is one of my habits, reading, getting smarter, learning more. So once again, I would add this to the must-read list, The Power of Habit.